A lot of what folks call American culture ain't really American. It's ours. From the way the music bends, to the way we wear our hats, to the slang in every corner of the country. That's foundational Black American culture, born from the soil, grown through struggle, stamped on everything, but rarely with our name. If you grew up in the 60s, 70s, or a few in the 80s, you probably played cowboys and Indians, running through the yard, popsicle stick rifles in hand, towels tied around your neck like capes, your imagination galloping faster than your legs ever could. They thought we were reenacting the Old West, but we were just playing out a story someone else wrote, one where we never existed, because once again, they put another group in our place. For generations, Americans grew up idolizing the cowboy. He was the symbol of freedom, grit, and unshakable confidence, always riding tall in the saddle, lone against the horizon. In living rooms from the 1950s through the 1980s, television poured out his image: white, clean-shaven, quick with a six-shooter, and quicker with his justice. His drawl was calm, his boots polished, and his enemies were always conveniently darker or nameless. But behind that myth lies a buried truth. The first cowboy, the real one, wasn't white. He was black. He was Mexican. He was indigenous. And he was nothing like the man on the movie posters. The term cowboy itself was never meant to be a compliment. In the aftermath of the Civil War, as cattle ranching exploded across Texas and the western frontier, the demand for skilled labor rose sharply. Herds of longhorn cattle needed to be driven north to Kansas railheads, and it was hard, punishing work, riding for weeks across open plains, through storms, bandit territory, and wide rivers. The labor was dangerous, filthy, and physical, ideal in the minds of white ranch owners. For the newly freed black men, left with few options after emancipation, these men were hired in droves, not as equals, but as laborers with no upward mobility. While white men working the same trails were called drovers or cattlemen, the black men were called cowboys. Two words, not just descriptive, but deliberately diminishing. In the South, boy had long been a slur used to strip black men of dignity and manhood. Even after slavery ended, the language held. No matter how skilled a rider, how tough a trail boss, or how respected on the range, a black man was still called boy. And yet, despite that, black cowboys became legends in their own right. Quietly, defiantly, they defined the frontier. Historians now estimate that 1 in 4 cowboys during the height of the cattle drive era was black. Others were Mexican vaqueros, descendants of the original Spanish horsemen, who taught Anglo settlers how to handle cattle in the first place. Still more were indigenous men, some of whom had adopted ranching culture after being displaced from their own lands. These were the real cowboys, and many of the stories we now attribute to white heroes and Stetsons were borrowed, if not outright stolen, from the lives of these men. Take Bass Reeves, for example. Born enslaved in Arkansas in 1838, Reeves escaped into Indian Territory during the Civil War and survived off the land. He mastered multiple native languages, tracked like a ghost, and became such a crack shot and tracker that he was eventually hired as a deputy U.S. Marshal. He rode for 30 years through the toughest parts of what is now Oklahoma, arresting over 3,000 fugitives, many of them white men, without ever being seriously wounded. His life reads like something out of Pulp Fiction: clever disguises, daring shootouts, close escapes, and an unwavering moral code. And yet, when the Lone Ranger debuted, a masked vigilante on a white horse fighting for justice in the Wild West, the character was white. The backstory bore eerie resemblance to Reeves's life, but the face was changed. Or consider Nat Love, born into slavery in Tennessee. After emancipation, he taught himself to read and headed west, where he became a famous cowboy and marksman. He participated in some of the largest cattle drives in the country and eventually became a railway guard, protecting freight from robbers and rustlers. He documented his own life in a 1907 autobiography, one of the few surviving first-hand accounts of black cowboy life. But when stories of Deadwood Dick, a quick-drawing Western hero, began to circulate in dime novels and pulp books, they were whitewashed. Nat Love's exploits were repackaged with a white hero at the center. Then, there's Bill Pickett, perhaps the most influential black cowboy of the early rodeo era. Born in 1870 in Texas, Pickett developed the technique of bulldogging, jumping from a horse onto a steer and wrestling it to the ground by biting its upper lip. The maneuver became a staple of rodeo performance, but Pickett was often excluded from competitions due to his race. Promoters sometimes billed him as Mexican or Indian just to get him in the ring. His fame grew, but his face was kept off the posters. His name was barely taught, even in cowboy museums. This theft of legacy wasn't accidental. As the American West was mythologized, black cowboys were systematically written out. When rodeos became organized and Wild West shows began touring the nation in the early 1900s, white performers took center stage, often mimicking the exact style and moves of the men they excluded. Hollywood followed the same pattern. Films like Stagecoach, The Searchers, and High Noon painted the cowboy as white by default. If a black character appeared, he was comic relief, a background hand, or a threat. The idea that the original cowboy culture had been built by black hands didn't fit the narrative. But the records speak for themselves. Journals, trail logs, and contracts confirm the presence of black cowboys across the frontier. In places like Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and Colorado, they worked as wranglers, ranch foremen, trail bosses, and rodeo pioneers. They passed their skills down through generations, riding styles, rope techniques, and even language that are still in use today. The erasure was cultural, deliberate, calculated, and yet, despite all attempts to whitewash their role, black cowboys never disappeared. The cowboy has always been more than a hat and a horse. He is a symbol of independence, yes, but also of endurance, of survival against the odds. And if you trace that symbol back to its roots, past the movie screens and cowboy boot ads, past the frontier novels and the whitewashed legends, you'll find its real origin, not in the face of John Wayne, but in the hands of a freedman, a man who was called a boy to his face, but rode like a king when no one was watching. So, if you didn't know, now you know. The cowboy didn't start in Hollywood. Black men rode first. Their stories were stolen, their faces erased, but the legacy still rides. I hope this history moved you. Like this video, share it. Drop a comment with a name they tried to erase to educate others. Help bring the truth back into the light and put us back in the saddle where we belong.